The sun of the star system Zelariah burned brightly through the glass walls of the Intergalactic Academy's arrival hall. Ships from countless planets had docked, each bearing students who believed themselves the most capable in the galaxy. They were predators, telepaths, shapeshifters, and every form of alien intellect imaginable. And then there was Eli, the human. He was small by comparison. Not fast, not strong, not able to change color or read minds. Humans had long been underestimated in the galaxy. Eli stepped down from the shuttle, his backpack light, his eyes blinking against the bright lights of the hall. Around him, aliens whispered and snickered. A blue-skinned telepath muttered, "He looks so ordinary."
Olivius, to the whispers, yawned.
He had been traveling for days in cramped quarters, and despite the excitement of being accepted into the academy, he felt the pull of sleep. His shuttle seat had been surprisingly comfortable, and now his legs ached from standing. The instructors arrived with a quiet authority that silenced the murmurs. They were tall and imposing, their limbs moving with grace no human could hope to imitate. Their voices echoed through the hall, amplified by the Academy's energy fields. "Welcome," one said. "You are here to test your survival instincts. Only the most capable will pass." The students were guided to the briefing room, a massive chamber that overlooked a simulation of a hostile planet. Lava flowed through chasms, storms lashed against rocky cliffs, and strange predators prowled dense forests. Holographic panels displayed survival data and hazard alerts. As the instructor spoke, Eli found a corner of the room with a soft bench. He sat down and immediately felt his eyelids grow heavy. The details of survival strategies, environmental hazards, and alien techniques blurred together. Without even realizing it, he leaned back and fell asleep. Around him, chaos unfolded. A group of reptilian students adjusted their claws, practicing climbing techniques for the rocky cliffs. A telepath floated slightly above the ground, sensing danger before it came. A shapeshifter morphed partially into a predator to test her reflexes. All the while, Eli snored lightly, a small rise and fall of his chest betraying the quiet power of his rest. An instructor raised an eyebrow. "Is the human asleep?" she asked. "Yes," another replied, almost amused. "I thought they were supposed to be a species with surprising adaptability." Apparently, not all humans are awake for the first test. Eli's slumber was deep, but it was not weakness. While his body rested, something remarkable happened. His mind, trained by centuries of human evolution, processed the simulation unconsciously. He shifted slightly, adjusting his position so he would not roll into a hazard. His breathing slowed in response to the changes in the simulated atmosphere. Even in sleep, he responded to the dangers of the environment, though he had no awareness of it. The instructors watched the monitors with interest. Alien students moved with precision, following calculated steps to survive. They predicted every hazard and adapted quickly, yet some were too rigid. When the simulation changed unexpectedly, they panicked or miscalculated. Eli, asleep and seemingly vulnerable, moved instinctively just enough to avoid danger without overthinking or overreacting. Perhaps, one instructor mused, the human's weakness is actually a form of passive strength. They were armed with gadgets, trained in advanced survival techniques, and confident in their abilities. Eli was still asleep on his bench, his head resting on his arm. The first challenge required them to land on a simulated planet called Torellia, a place designed to test every skill a being could have. Gravity was uneven, predators roamed freely, weather changed in minutes, and food was scarce. Every student would face extreme stress. Every student, that is, except the sleeping human. The instructors led the students to the landing platforms. Alien students leapt, glided, and teleported into the simulation zone. They scanned for danger, calculated the trajectory of falling rocks, and assessed the movements of predators. All except Eli. He was carefully carried on to the landing shuttle by a staff member who knew better than to disturb him. The shuttle landed with a soft hum on the rocky terrain. The other students immediately spread out, alert and cautious. Eli was still asleep, gently placed on a soft patch of ground. The wind whipped around him, carrying the scent of alien flora and the distant growls of predators. A small predator, resembling a cross between a lizard and a panther, crept toward the group. It moved quickly, silent, calculating. The aliens reacted instantly, each using their species' instincts. One shapeshifter transformed partially to frighten the creature. A telepath sent a warning wave to the others. A reptilian leapt to a higher ledge, but the predator ignored the sleeping human entirely. It moved in a circle around him, confused, as if it sensed something unusual about his presence. Eli shifted slightly in his sleep, rolling onto his side. The predator, uncertain, moved away. A slight smile played on the instructor's face as she watched. "Humans," she said softly. "They survive in ways we do not understand." Hours passed. Alien students encountered hazards, narrowly escaping storms, falling rocks, and predatory attacks. Their muscles ached, their minds raced, and many made small mistakes. Eli, still asleep, remained untouched, even as the sun shifted in the simulation, creating shadowed cliffs and hot plains. He moved instinctively to avoid danger, sometimes simply by turning, sometimes by stretching in a direction that kept him safe. By the end of the day, instructors gathered the students. Many were battered, tired, and anxious. Aliens whispered among themselves, debating the methods that worked and failed. Then they looked at Eli. He stirred, blinking as if waking from a dream. He stood slowly, brushed himself off, and looked around. "Is he ready for the debrief?" one instructor asked. "Yes," replied another, trying not to laugh. He slept through the entire simulation, and yet the instructors hesitated, exchanging glances. Eli had passed without effort, without instinctive strategy, without even consciously thinking about survival. The monitors showed he had never once been in serious danger. His simple, unplanned movements had kept him safe. Eli yawned again. "So, did I do okay?" he asked. His voice was casual, unconcerned. The other students stared. They had fought, calculated, and risked everything. And here was a human who had slept through it all and come out unharmed. One of the instructors, tall and with eyes like molten silver, shook her head in disbelief. "You have completed the first test," she said slowly. "You survived. Somehow. Perhaps this is a new form of instinct we have not yet measured." The students could hardly believe it. Whispers rose among them, a mix of envy and confusion. How could someone pass a survival test without acting, without strategy, without even being awake? Eli smiled faintly. "Guess I just slept through it," he said. And then he sat down again, yawning, ready for whatever came next. The instructors exchanged looks. Humans were unpredictable, yes. But perhaps that unpredictability was exactly what made them extraordinary. Even when they did nothing, they survived. Even when they seemed weak, they adapted. As night fell on the simulation, the alien students prepared for the next day with anxiety. They had underestimated humans. They had assumed instinct was everything. But one sleeping human had proven that adaptability, calm, and simple uncalculated choices could be stronger than even the most honed instincts in the galaxy. And Eli, still half asleep, dreamed on, blissfully unaware that he had just given the galaxy a small but undeniable lesson. Never count a human out. The next morning, the alien students woke to the sound of simulated storms raging across the Torellia landscape. Winds howled, shaking rocks loose from the cliffs, and distant roars echoed through the valleys. Each student readied themselves, checking equipment, scanning for predators, and running mental simulations of survival strategies. Eli, on the other hand, yawned and stretched under a tree. He had slept comfortably through the night, shielded by the natural cover of the simulated environment and perhaps by some unconscious human instinct. He rubbed his eyes and took a deep breath. The air was crisp, the scent of alien flora strong, and he felt surprisingly refreshed. Come on, Eli, a reptilian student hissed as he passed.
You can't just sleep your way through the second test. I'll be fine, he said.
I always am. The instructors watched from above, invisible but present, monitoring the students' every move. They had designed this stage to test adaptability under pressure. It was no longer a controlled environment. Hazards would shift, predators would change tactics, and the weather would challenge every instinctive survival skill. As the students moved into the terrain, the first storm hit. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the jagged cliffs and wet, uneven ground. Alien students used telepathy, speed, or shape-shifting to avoid hazards. One telepath attempted to sense where lightning would strike, only to miscalculate and leap into a muddy trench. A shapeshifter partially transformed into a flying predator to escape the rain, but strong gusts made controlling her form difficult. Eli, by contrast, wandered slowly, letting the storm guide him. His feet found firm ground by chance. His body shifted to balance on slick rocks without conscious thought, and he ducked instinctively under a large overhanging boulder as thunder roared above. He did not calculate or panic. He simply moved, adapting naturally to the environment. A predator, resembling a large feline with 6 glowing eyes, emerged from the underbrush. Its gaze swept over the students, evaluating each one as potential prey. The alien students reacted immediately. The shapeshifter lunged to scare it. A reptilian student jumped to a cliff, and a telepath sent a warning signal to others. All avoided danger, but not without mistakes. Eli stood still, watching. His heart did not race. He did not calculate escape routes. Somehow, he felt safe. The predator circled him, confused. It swiped at the ground near his feet, but did not strike. When Eli took a slow step back, the creature hesitated, and finally moved on. One of the instructors, watching from a hidden observation point, shook her head. "The human still does not act," she said, "and yet it survives." The alien students began to notice Eli's uncanny luck. At first, they assumed it was random, but as the day progressed, patterns emerged. Where aliens overthought or relied solely on instinct, Ellie remained unharmed. Where they rushed, he took his time. Where they tried to manipulate the environment aggressively, he simply observed and moved. And somehow, it worked. By midday, the simulation intensified. The storms became violent, rivers swelled with rain, and new predators appeared, some terrestrial, some capable of flight. A sudden earthquake shook the ground, splitting paths and creating dangerous chasms. Alien students scrambled, calling out to each other, using powers to stabilize themselves or escape. Some succeeded, some did not. Eli, meanwhile, found a quiet slope and sat down to rest. Rocks tumbled near him, but his body instinctively shifted to avoid impact. Rain poured down, soaking him, but he did not panic. His basic knowledge of shelter, something learned from stories, instincts, and human experience, led him to crawl under a sturdy fallen branch. From there, he watched the chaos unfold. The instructors began to take notes. They had never observed a student survive so many unpredictable threats without any conscious survival strategy. Every alien skill, speed, telepathy, shape-shifting, was tested, and yet a human, considered weaker and slower, moved through the same dangers effortlessly. It reacts differently, passively almost, but effectively. By afternoon, some alien students had exhausted themselves. One telepath fainted from mental strain. A shapeshifter miscalculated and fell into a river, and a reptilian student narrowly avoided a predator but broke a claw in the process. The simulation seemed designed to weed out even the strongest, yet Eli continued to adapt with ease. Hungry, wet, and tired, the human took out a small rations pack. He ate slowly, observing the predators and environmental hazards. Alien students were shocked at the calmness he displayed. Where they panicked and overreacted, he remained measured. Where they relied on advanced techniques and instinctive skill, He used simple observation and human common sense. The instructors discussed this development.
"Perhaps this is the essence of human adaptability," one said. "They survive not because they are strongest, not because they are fastest, not because they can predict every threat.
They survive because they can observe, think simply, and adjust without stress." As evening approached, the final stage of the second test began. The instructors unleashed a complex predator, a massive, semi-intelligent creature with multiple appendages, keen senses, and incredible speed. It moved unpredictably, attacking anything that showed weakness. The alien students tried to anticipate its actions, but the predator's intelligence exceeded their expectations. Some were caught off guard, some panicked, others reacted too quickly, making mistakes that put them in danger. Eli again had no plan. He wandered slowly through the terrain, careful where he stepped, aware of the shifting landscape, but not focused on the predator. By accident, he avoided the creature repeatedly. Rocks fell in his path. He shifted slightly to avoid them. Water surged from a nearby river. He sidestepped. The predator approached, swiped, and passed him over. The other students stared in disbelief. They had faced the same predator, using every skill and tactic they had learned. Yet Eli survived while they struggled. One of the instructors finally spoke aloud, addressing the students.
"Observe the human carefully."
Notice how he does not panic, how he does not overthink. Notice how he survives without relying on instinctive calculations.
"This is a new form of strength."
By nightfall, the storm had passed. Alien students huddled together, exhausted and wounded. Some were angry at their failure, some were confused. But Eli, dry and relaxed under a tree, smiled faintly. The instructors concluded the second test. Reports showed that Eli had passed every stage, untouched by predators and hazards that had challenged the most skilled alien students. They noted something extraordinary: the human's calm, observant approach, even without conscious thought, allowed him to survive where instinct alone failed. The alien students approached Eli cautiously. "How did you do that?" a telepath asked. You didn't even react like us. You didn't calculate anything." Ellie shrugged. "I just moved and stayed calm," he said. "I didn't overthink. I guess it worked." The instructors exchanged glances. This was exactly what they had wanted to see. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but that unpredictability, combined with calm observation and passive adaptation, made them formidable in ways no alien species fully understood. As the students prepared to rest for the night, the instructors gathered privately. "We have underestimated humans," one said. "They are weaker in speed and strength, but their resilience and adaptability are unmatched." Eli lay under a canopy of alien trees, closing his eyes once more. He was tired but not stressed. He had survived storms, predators, earthquakes, and semi-intelligent hunting creatures, without panic, without complex tactics, and without even fully realizing the danger. And the galaxy's greatest lesson began to form. Sometimes, doing nothing, or doing very little, was the most effective way to survive. Humans could pass tests designed to challenge the strongest minds and instincts in the universe simply by being themselves, calm, adaptable, and unpredictably clever. As Eli drifted into sleep again, the alien students whispered among themselves, shaken and fascinated. The human who slept through the test had survived, and somehow they knew that the next challenge would be far more difficult, but that this small, ordinary-looking human might just prove stronger than any of them, in ways they could not yet imagine. The morning on Torellia arrived with an eerie stillness. The storms of the previous day had passed, leaving jagged rocks slick with rain and rivers swollen with runoff. Alien students moved cautiously, examining the terrain, scanning for predators, and preparing for the next phase of the Academy's survival tests. Their muscles ached, their minds were weary, and doubt had begun to creep in. They whispered about Eli, the human who had slept through 2 days of tests and somehow survived everything. Eli awoke under the shade of a large, twisted tree. His clothes were damp, his hair messy, and his skin streaked with mud. But he felt rested and ready. He stretched lazily, observing the landscape around him. The alien students were already moving, scrambling over cliffs, leaping across rivers, or using telepathy to sense danger. Eli yawned, grabbed a small water pack from his backpack, and began walking at a slow, steady pace. The instructors had designed this day to test not only survival instinct, but also ingenuity. Hazards would now move and change unpredictably. Predators would hunt strategically. Rivers would flood, landslides would strike without warning, and resources would be limited. It was meant to challenge the most adaptable minds in the galaxy. Eli's first obstacle appeared quickly. A stream of water surged across a rocky plain, faster and wider than the previous day's rivers. Alien students leapt, soared, or teleported across, some barely making it. One reptilian student slipped and fell into the water, claws digging into the wet rocks, struggling to climb out. Eli approached slowly, observing the movement of the water. He found a sturdy log lying across the stream. It was narrow, unstable, and just barely long enough to reach the other side. Without hesitation, he placed his foot on the log, testing its balance, and stepped across carefully. He felt the log shift beneath him, but instinctively adjusted his weight. His movements were not fast or flashy, but they were steady and effective. He reached the other side without incident. Alien students watched in disbelief. "He's still moving slower than me," one telepath whispered. "And yet he survives." The instructors monitored every action. They had anticipated instinct-based responses, but humans continued to defy their expectations. Eli did not rely on raw speed, strength, or telepathy. Instead, he combined observation, calm decision-making, and simple ingenuity. Soon after, a predator emerged. This one was unlike any before, a four-legged creature with iridescent scales, long whip-like tails, and sharp claws designed to climb or strike with incredible speed. It roared, a sound that shook the nearby cliffs, and immediately began hunting the alien students. The shapeshifter tried to intimidate it, morphing part of her body into spikes. The telepath attempted to confuse it with psychic waves. The reptilian student charged with claws extended. All struggled. Some escaped, some barely survived. Eli, walking slowly along the ridge above the fray, observed the predator. It moved predictably when it attacked. He noticed the pattern. It favored attacking the loudest, most reactive students. Quiet, careful observation kept him unnoticed. Without overthinking, he crouched behind a boulder and waited. The predator's attention shifted elsewhere, and he continued along the ridge, unchallenged. By midday, the simulation had grown more complex. A sudden landslide blocked part of the path, forcing students to climb steep cliffs. A storm began, mixing heavy rain with strong wind. Alien students panicked, rushing or using complicated tactics to avoid falling. One telepath misjudged the wind and was carried over the edge, saved only by quick reflexes. A shapeshifter lost balance while adjusting her form and tumbled, scraping against jagged rocks. Eli walked calmly along a safer route, avoiding danger by simple observation. He noticed small details, the angle of loose rocks, the direction of the wind, the path predators preferred. He adjusted accordingly, never panicking, never overcomplicating his approach. His adaptability became more apparent as other students watched in awe. Hungry, Eli paused under a natural rock overhang to eat from his rations. The alien students scowled, working themselves into exhaustion. They were constantly reacting, overanalyzing every move, trying to outwit hazards. Eli, meanwhile, used simple techniques to survive: observation, careful movement, and occasional improvisation. The instructors decided to escalate the challenge further. They introduced a moving predator with higher intelligence, capable of learning from previous encounters. It could anticipate instinctive behavior, adapt to strategies, and change its hunting pattern mid-attack. This predator would force students to think creatively, rather than rely on instinct. The predator appeared suddenly on the open plain. Alien students panicked immediately. The shapeshifter morphed partially into a defensive form. The telepath attempted to redirect the creature mentally. The reptilian student ran for cover. Each struggled to maintain balance and focus under pressure. Eli observed quietly. He noticed a fallen tree nearby. It could be used as a barrier or a trap. Without thinking too hard, he positioned the tree across the predator's path. When the predator approached, it stumbled slightly, giving Eli time to move along an alternate route. The predator recovered, but Eli had already disappeared from view, careful to remain inconspicuous and calm. The instructors were intrigued. Humans were not acting out of instinct. They were acting out of calm ingenuity and observation, adjusting their environment and actions in ways that no alien could predict. Even when faced with a highly intelligent predator, Eli survived using tools and thinking, not instinct or power. As the day progressed, the simulation introduced another hazard: sudden earthquakes. Rocks tumbled, cliffs shifted, and the ground split unpredictably. Alien students panicked, some narrowly avoiding falling debris, some losing balance entirely. Eli noticed patterns in the shifting terrain and adjusted his path. He crawled under unstable rocks, stepped carefully around splits in the ground, and used fallen debris as cover when predators approached. By late afternoon, the alien students were exhausted, their energy reserves depleted. They struggled to maintain control. The telepath's mind was fatigued from constant scanning. The shapeshifter's muscles ached from repeated transformations. The reptilian student's claws were scraped and bruised. Yet Eli continued to move with ease. He was tired, yes, but rested, alert, and composed. One alien student finally approached him cautiously. "How are you still fine?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We're all struggling, and you just walk through this?" Ellie shrugged.
I'm just paying attention and taking my time. Doesn't have to be harder than it is. The instructors exchanged looks.
One spoke softly, almost to herself. "This is the human advantage. They do not overcomplicate. They do not panic. They observe, adapt, and act simply. Their survival is not instinct. It is intelligence applied calmly." As evening fell, the final challenge of the day began. The simulation created a maze of shifting terrain, filled with predators, traps, and environmental hazards. Alien students had to navigate quickly, relying on instincts, training, and reflexes. Many struggled immediately. One reptilian student became trapped between moving walls. A shapeshifter miscalculated a jump and fell into a pit. A telepath overestimated the predator's movement and nearly got caught. Eli approached the maze slowly, observing the patterns of movement, the timing of traps, and the predator's behavior. He did not rush, he did not panic. Step by step he moved through the maze, carefully avoiding danger. Occasionally he used simple tools, a stick to block a swinging trap, a branch to steady a falling log, but nothing complicated. The alien students watched in disbelief. They were exhausted, panicked, and frustrated. Eli moved calmly, confidently, surviving every hazard. His movements were deliberate but unhurried, and he appeared almost untouchable. By nightfall, the simulation ended. Alien students huddled together, bruised, battered, and exhausted. Eli, on the other hand, stood quietly, surveying the area. He had survived the day's complex hazards, intelligent predators, and shifting terrain without serious injury or stress. He smiled faintly, tired but proud. The instructors gathered the students. "Observe the human," one said. "Notice how he survives. Notice how he thrives under conditions that challenge even the strongest instincts. This is adaptability. This is intelligence. This is the human way." The alien students were stunned. They had relied on instinct, skill, and reflex. Yet a human, small, seemingly ordinary, outperformed them using calm observation, clever adaptation, and simple problem-solving. As the students prepared to rest, Eli found a quiet hill and lay down under a cluster of trees. He was tired, yes, but rested. His mind replayed the day in fragments, but he did not overthink. He simply drifted to sleep, confident that he had survived. Again. The instructors watched from their hidden observation points, nodding. "Humans," one said softly. "They are unpredictable, yes."
But perhaps that is exactly why they survive where others fail. They do not panic.
They do not overcomplicate. They adapt. And Eli slept, unconcerned with glory or recognition. He had proven again that humans could survive, and even thrive, where the galaxy's most skilled instincts struggled. Calm, observation, ingenuity. These were the weapons of humanity, quietly dominating challenges no alien had fully understood. The sun rose over Terelia, casting long shadows across the jagged landscape. The final test was about to begin. The instructors had pulled out every challenge from their simulations and combined them into a single, ultimate trial. This was no ordinary survival scenario. Predators moved with unprecedented intelligence. The terrain shifted without warning, and environmental hazards were harsher than ever. Only those who could adapt, think clearly, and act decisively could survive. Alien students gathered at the starting point, tense and exhausted. Their bodies bore the marks of previous challenges, scrapes, bruises, and fatigue etched across their features. Many whispered anxiously about Eli, the human who had slept, observed, and somehow survived every previous test without apparent effort. Eli, however, approached slowly. He had rested well the night before, his mind calm and his body ready. He carried nothing more than a small backpack with minimal supplies, a few rations, and a water pack. He yawned, stretching, and surveyed the landscape. The alien students looked at him in disbelief. How could he remain so calm, so untroubled, when the final test was about to push everyone to the limit? The instructors addressed the students.
"This final test will challenge every skill you have."
The predators are intelligent, the terrain is unpredictable, and your instincts will be tested like never before. Only those who can adapt beyond instinct will succeed.
With that, the barriers lifted, and the students entered the simulation. Immediately, chaos erupted.
Predators moved swiftly, some flying, some climbing, some burrowing from hidden tunnels. Landslides ripped across the cliffs, rivers swelled and changed course, and the ground itself seemed to shake unpredictably. Alien students reacted instantly. Shapeshifters morphed to gain speed or defense. Telepaths tried to anticipate threats, and predators themselves hunted strategically. Many succeeded temporarily, but soon mistakes and miscalculations led to injuries or near misses. Eli moved calmly, his pace unhurried but deliberate. He scanned the environment, noticing small details others overlooked. The angle of a cliff edge, a loose branch that could serve as a bridge, the pattern of a predator's movement. While aliens relied on instinct and pre-learned strategies, Eli relied on observation, patience, and human creativity. The first major challenge appeared. A wide canyon with a rapidly rising river. Alien students leapt or flew across, using speed and instinct. One reptilian student misjudged the distance and fell, barely escaping by clinging to the cliffside. A shapeshifter almost made it, but lost balance when the river swelled suddenly. Eli approached the canyon slowly. He found a fallen tree spanning the gap, its end resting precariously on the rocks. Instead of rushing, he tested it, adjusting his balance with careful steps. When he reached the center, the log shifted, but his instincts, deeply human though unconscious, allowed him to maintain balance. He reached the other side safely. Alien students stared. "He's moving so slowly," one telepath said. "And yet he survives. Every instinct we have fails and he adapts." The instructors were equally fascinated. Humans had no extraordinary speed, no psychic powers, no shape-shifting abilities. Yet they survived where others relied entirely on instinct and failed. They noted that Eli's strength lay in calm observation and clever improvisation, not reflexive skill. The terrain shifted again. A predator larger than any before, a multi-limbed, semi-intelligent beast, appeared on the open plain. Its glowing eyes scanned the students, its movements precise and calculated. Alien students panicked. Some tried to fight, others ran blindly. Many were caught off guard by the creature's ability to anticipate instinctive behavior. Eli, observing quietly from behind a rock, noticed the predator's pattern. It attacked, the loudest, the fastest, the most reactive. He moved slowly and deliberately, avoiding attention. When the predator approached, he found a narrow crevice in the cliffside. He slipped inside just in time, the creature's claws scraping the rock edge, but failing to reach him. By midday, the final test grew more complicated. Environmental hazards combined, shifting terrain, sudden geysers of hot steam, collapsing cliffs, and flooding rivers. Alien students struggled, relying on instinctual responses that were no longer enough. Fatigue and panic clouded their judgment. Some miscalculated and fell. Others barely avoided predators but lost valuable energy. Eli, in contrast, adapted naturally. He noticed small opportunities, a fallen branch to steady a wobbly rock, a natural alcove for shelter, a shallow path along a river to avoid swift currents. He did not panic. He did not overthink. He moved with calm precision, improvising when necessary and conserving energy when possible. Hungry and thirsty, Eli paused under a rock overhang. He ate a few rations and drank from his water pack. Alien students watching from afar were astonished. They had expended massive amounts of energy relying on reflex, speed, and instinct, while the human ate calmly and rested, fully aware of his surroundings yet not overreacting to danger. The instructors decided to test creativity further. They introduced moving traps, unpredictable predator behavior, and sudden environmental shifts. Alien students reacted quickly, but their instincts betrayed them. One telepath misread a trap and triggered it. A shapeshifter overextended their form and became trapped. A reptilian student attempted to fight a predator and was nearly injured. Eli approached each new challenge slowly, analyzing, observing, and using simple solutions. He blocked traps with fallen debris, used small rocks to distract predators, and walked carefully along safer terrain rather than rushing blindly. His calm approach allowed him to conserve energy, avoid injury, and outmaneuver dangers without even realizing it. By late afternoon, the simulation introduced a massive predator ambush. Multiple creatures coordinated to herd the students into a central trap. Alien students panicked, trying to escape in different directions. Some were caught, some barely survived, and others were forced to retreat. Eli walked steadily into the zone, observing the predator's movements. He noticed a narrow gap in the terrain that the predators could not enter. Using fallen logs and rocks, he subtly guided the creatures toward each other, creating a natural barrier. The predators, confused by his calm movements, failed to detect him. He passed safely through the ambush, untouched and untroubled. The instructors were amazed. Alien students relied on instinct, reaction, and learned tactics, yet the humans survived using calm observation, creativity, and patience. They noted that humans did not fight instinctively or overreact to threats. They adapted, improvised, and allowed the environment to work in their favor. As evening approached, the final challenge, the ultimate environmental shift, began. The ground shook violently. Cliffs collapsed, rivers surged, and predators hunted aggressively. Alien students scrambled desperately, many making mistakes or panicking. Eli, however, moved steadily. He noticed subtle changes. A loose rock that could be used as a bridge, a small ledge that provided cover, a fallen branch to steady a slippery path. Step by step, he navigated the chaos. He avoided predators, outsmarted traps, and adjusted naturally to the changing terrain. The instructors gathered for the final evaluation.
Observe the human, one said. He does not panic.
He does not overreact. He adapts. He survives where instinct fails. This is the essence of human strength. Alien students looked on in disbelief. They had relied on every skill and instinct at their disposal, yet this ordinary-looking human, small, unassuming, and seemingly ordinary, had outperformed them all. Finally, the simulation ended. Alien students huddled together, exhausted and beaten. Their instincts had carried them only so far. Some were injured, some were confused, and some were humbled. Eli, calm and composed, stepped out from his final hiding place. He had survived every hazard, predator, and environmental challenge, without panic, without overthinking, and without extraordinary skills. He smiled faintly, stretching and brushing dust from his clothes. The instructors approached him. "You have completed the final test," one said. "You survived challenges that the most instinct-driven species in the galaxy struggled with. You adapted, you improvised, and you remained calm under pressure. You have passed."
Ellie shrugged casually. "Guess I just kept my cool," he said.
"I tried to pay attention and not panic."
Alien students stared, unable to comprehend how he had succeeded. They had relied on reflex, instinct, and training.
Eli had relied on calm, observation, creativity, and patience. In doing so, he had achieved the impossible, survival without relying on extraordinary skills.
The instructors nodded. "Humans are unpredictable," one said softly.
"They are weaker in speed, strength, or instinct, yet they survive through adaptability, intelligence, and calm judgment. They are formidable in ways the galaxy does not yet understand." Eli looked around at the exhausted alien students. Some glared, some whispered, some shook their heads in disbelief. He smiled faintly, not arrogantly, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had simply done what humans always did: adapt, survive, and thrive. As the sun set on Torellia, Eli sat quietly on a rock, sipping water and watching the landscape. The alien students huddled together, exhausted and reflective. They had learned a lesson they would not forget. Never underestimate a human. For humans, the galaxy's greatest strength was not instinct, not reflex, and not raw power. It was adaptability, ingenuity, calmness under pressure, and the ability to thrive in situations no one could predict. And Eli, the human who slept through the first test, calmly observed the second, and creatively adapted in the third, had proven it once and for all. The instructors, impressed and slightly awed, made a quiet note. Humanity would never be the same in the galaxy's calculations. Unpredictable, adaptable, resilient. Humans had a way of surviving where others would fail. And Ellie, unbothered and still calm, closed his eyes as the stars appeared overhead. He had passed the Academy's ultimate survival test, not through instinct, not through speed, and not through strength, but through what made humans extraordinary: patience, observation, and the ability to adapt in ways the galaxy had yet to understand. The aliens had underestimated him, and humanity, as always, had quietly triumphed.